Welcome back to Rewind of the Living Dead and our first official horror movie review for 2026. I'm Damon Martin.
And I'm Patrick Guerra.
And Patrick, after a long run of Stranger Things, we are now back into our horror movie cycle with the first big horror release of 2026, as I mentioned in the intro, a new Australian-led horror film by Zach Hilditch called We Bury the Dead.
Damon, happy new year, new horror movies for us. I'm so excited. We Bury the Dead is released, of course, in January of 2026. Matt Whelan stars as Mitch. Mark Coles Smith is Riley. Brenton Thwaites is Clay, and it stars Damon, yours and mine favorite, Daisy Ridley as Ava. I actually really do love Daisy Ridley. And yes, as you mentioned, Zach Hilditch is our writer and director. We Bury the Dead, Damon, a catastrophic military disaster. The dead don't just rise, they hunt. Ava searches for her missing husband, but what she finds is far more terrifying. That is the movie in a nutshell. You can read that anywhere. That's not a spoiler. Here we are, Damon, first horror movie of the year. Now that Stranger Things is over, we can get to horror things. But have we gotten to horror things yet?
I'm glad you say that, Patrick, because one of my big discussions about this movie that I saw in the theater basically 24 hours ago is that I would argue this isn't even a horror movie. Now, I'm not saying there aren't horrific things and there's horrific subject matter, but I would argue this isn't really a horror movie. It is more of a drama dressed up with horrific elements. Now, I know, you know me, Patrick, I'm a big inclusion guy. If it teeters on horror, I call it horror. Anyone that tries to tell me Silence of the Lambs isn't a horror movie, you're just a hater. It's a horror movie. This movie teeters on horror, but I think the mistake in the marketing, and even you could argue in maybe even the name and the trailer, and by the way, I didn't see the trailer until after I'd seen the movie. I literally knew nothing about this going in outside of, like, I knew the premise and I knew it had Daisy Ridley in it. I saw the trailer afterwards. I was like, boy, they marketed this movie wrong, because this is being sold to you as a zombie movie. And by the way, my intro, if you don't listen to the intro, I mentioned that Daisy Ridley's character is walking into the zombie apocalypse. That's not really what happens. The reason I put that in the intro is because I wrote it before I saw the movie, because that was all the marketing. Every marketing campaign was like, oh, she's walking into the zombie apocalypse. This is a movie about the zombie apocalypse. So I put it in the intro because that's literally what all the marketing said. Patrick, she's not really walking into the zombie apocalypse, and that's not a spoiler. I'm just setting expectations because, and I know we try to tell people as little as we can during our non-spoiler section, but I feel obligated to say that because I feel like they're setting people up for failure. They're setting themselves up for failure by telling people this is a movie about the zombie apocalypse.
That is true. I don't know how you actually feel about the movie. We haven't really talked about it yet. That's what we're here to do on the podcast. But I had a distinct advantage watching this movie, which is I went in absolutely cold. I actually got to see this at a film festival. My short film, The Path, rah, 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 pat myself on the back, was showing at the Telluride Horror Show. And if you have not been to that and you love going to horror film festivals, I'm not just saying it because they chose me. I'm super honored that I was chosen. It's a really fun film festival dedicated to horror with great people working on it. And it's like, it takes place in Telluride, Colorado, where the regular Telluride Film Festival takes place. Small town vibes. The whole town gets into it. If you're one of those people that travels, I have a buddy that goes every year, like him and his wife go for their anniversary and just watch great horror films. This is where I saw We Bury the Dead back in October. So I got the film festival advantage. I'm lucky that way. But I was actually trying to see the movie It Ends, which is now, I believe you can rent that on Letterboxd currently, and I think it's coming out later this year. I wasn't able to see It Ends. The crowd for that was packed. So right next door was the theater for We Bury the Dead. And I was like, okay, cool. Let's just go see that because we're right here. Otherwise, I'd have to walk all the way back into town. I didn't want to do that. The next showing was in 15 minutes. We sat down. I knew nothing about this movie, Damon. I knew zero. I'd heard Daisy Ridley, and I was like, well, that's cool. I like Daisy Ridley. We Bury the Dead sounds horrific. I sat down. I watched this movie. No spoilers here. But I really liked it. I really enjoyed it. And then I saw the marketing, because now I could watch the marketing all I wanted. I've already seen the movie. So as the marketing rolled out, I went, uh-oh. we got a problem. They're really marketing this as a hardcore zombie horror movie where you are going to be running from bloodthirsty, brain hungry zombies. And I'm here to tell you, without spoiling anything, it's not that movie. Don't look for that movie when you go see this movie. I hate to pre-frame anything because you know me, I'm Mr. Cold, right? Go in as ice cold as you can. But if your expectations for this movie oh yeah, it's gonna Daisy Ridley running from zombies and fighting them off with her fucking ray powers, that'll be awesome. I'm sorry to tell you that's not what this movie is. This movie is a drama first and foremost. It uses the zombie template, and in my opinion, we'll get to that in spoilers. I think it uses it in a very clever way because I think the zombie genre in general is very difficult to reinvent. And I'm not saying they even necessarily reinvented it here. I'm just saying that to use the template in a way that you don't typically see is hard to do. And I've seen movies like We Bury the Dead before, and I didn't particularly enjoy them. I enjoy this one much more, and it might have many factors to do with. One, I do really like Daisy Ridley. I think some people love her, some people hate her. I don't know how you could hate a woman like she seems like one of the sweetest women alive, like genuinely just a nice person. So the person I like, and she's one of the few things I really like about the new Star Wars trilogy. I like her, I like Finn, and I liked Poe. I liked those people. The movies are a mixed bag, but I really liked them. And so I was like, cool. Well, I like them. This I didn't know Zach Hildich's work, but I think he's a phenomenal director. I think what I saw there, I was like, wow, it's a competently made movie that I think has a very clear story, and we'll get into that because to me, that's the thing that stuck out here was what the movie's kind of about. And Damon, I'll toss this to you. In my opinion, personally, zombie movies have been done ad nauseum since the great George A. Romero really brought it to the forefront with Night of the Living Dead back in 1968. We know there were zombie movies before that, but this was really that was the critical turning point. And it's been tough to honestly say that there have been tons of great ones since. There's been outliers that you're like, that's awesome. To me, the awesome ones, they're all about the theme. They're all about what's really under the surface. It's not about the zombie chasing after you. It's not about the brains being eaten. You're there for that. That's the fun and games of it all. That's the stuff that, that's the party favors. But ultimately, we're there to celebrate something. And the best zombie movies celebrate an idea. They offer an idea up on the table that uses the relentless chattering teeth and the dragging feet of zombies to get its point across. Damon, I think you're even a bigger zombie guy than I am, truth be told. Do you agree with that take or not? For you, does it matter that zombie movies have a deep theme under their skin?
I mean, to a certain extent, it's kind of funny because I would argue that the theme of zombie movies really started with Night of the Living Dead, with that being kind of a social commentary on race and
Yes.
the black hero and obviously watching him get shot at the end of the movie and things like that, and that became and I've read interviews and I've seen interviews from years ago with George Romero where he said I didn't really necessarily make it with that intention, but when people kind of pointed out, I was like, yeah, that actually is and I think like George Romero. You can argue with me all you want. He invented the zombie genre. I don't want to hear about all the. There were movies before this, and I know Hammer Films had some zombie movies in there. But come on now, it was George Romero, and what he did with Night of the Living Dead provided a real powerful social commentary in that movie, on purpose or not. Dawn of the Dead, which a lot of people would argue is the greatest zombie film ever made, and I would say there's a real good argument for that. That there was a level of social commentary in there as well. There was also the commentary which really started a whole new genre of zombie movies, which is the humans are more to fear than the zombies. We saw that in the way that Dawn of the Dead played out. And then you look at Day of the Dead with the invention of the intervention of the military, and you're talking about power structure. You're talking about a doctor trying to find a way to work within the zombie virus, whatever you want to call it, to kind of save us from the plague. And once again, there's going on with power dynamics in that movie. George Romero had a very specific way of tackling the zombie movie where he kind of made it his own way every single time out. And I think probably one of the movies he made that had like the I don't know, like the least amount of like critical reaction was probably Land of the Dead because that one didn't really feature a whole lot of social commentary. Like, yeah, you get the haves and the have-nots, and that was a lot about, the billionaire class, the millionaire class versus the poor. And I understand there was some social commentary in there, but that film didn't get nearly the reaction that some of his earlier work did. So zombie films in general have always had that layered within them. And I think when you talk about the really truly great zombie films or even TV shows the past like 40 years, I mean, you don't have to love it, but you can't deny how big The Walking Dead was. The Walking Dead was a massive, I mean, there was a time when, like, we talk about Game of Thrones being like water cooler conversation, like that was The Walking Dead. You don't get whatever ridiculous like 13, 14, 15 million viewers a week without that being water cooler talk thing. Now, did it go on too long? Did they mess up storylines? Did they ruin characters? Sure, there was a lot of problems with The Walking Dead, but for a couple years there, you cannot deny that was one of the biggest cultural touchstones of pop culture. And then you look at what's going on right now with The Last of Us. That's another one. That's become a very popular talking point on television. Then you look at the Dawn of the Dead remake, and I think 28 Days Later was a reinvention. I know you don't even really like calling that a zombie movie, but it's a zombie movie, Patrick. I know they're not technically dead, but the idea, the concept is the same. So
Sure.
reinventing that genre and coming up with that kind of like subtext is has been baked into zombie films as long as they've been making zombie films. And I think what We Bury the Dead. First off, let me just make the commentary here. This kind of feels very much like Longlegs. They just marketed it wrong. It should not have been. And I understand you're trying to get the horror audience to come in to see your movie. It is technically a horror movie. I know I said it's not really. It isn't. But, you're trying to get your horror audience in there because zombies are technically involved. I get it. But much like Longlegs saying this is the next Silence of the Lambs, I said that was it was a brilliant marketing campaign, but it was also the worst marketing campaign because it set expectations. You're going in for this serial killer drama that's supposed to be the best thing since Anthony Hopkins won an Oscar. I'm here to tell you, folks, it wasn't that at all. Still a good movie, the one Osgood Perkins movie I actually like, but it wasn't that. And I think the reaction, the harsh reaction, was coming out of the theater saying this wasn't like Silence of the Lambs at all.
Yeah.
I'm telling you right now, if you go in this movie thinking I'm getting a zombie apocalypse movie, you're going to be severely disappointed. Now, as far as the themes go, I think the theme here in this movie really comes to, and by the way, I enjoy that part of it because we talk about like the socio-political themes in the Dead movies, the George Romero. We're talking about much bigger themes, right? We're talking about racism. We're talking about power dynamics. We're talking about social inequality. Those are very, very big themes. This movie doesn't go that deep. I'm not saying deep as in like it's not a deep movie. I'm
Yeah.
saying like
It doesn't use the big themes. Yeah.
yeah, it's a relationship drama tucked into a zombie movie.
Right.
And I appreciate it. And also I appreciated the uniqueness, much like 28 Days Later, where it's a quote unquote rage virus, not,
Sure.
they're dead coming back to life. This one kind of tackles it in a different way as well. So there's a lot to like about this movie. And I do think there is a powerful theme at work here. Like I said, it is a relationship drama at the heart of it all. The execution is a little off here and there, and there are some moments that drag. And I'm telling you right now, I know this is like a trigger word for some people. This is a slow burn. If you are annoyed by slow moving movies that you really have to like get, I mean, it's not that like nothing happens. It's just not that kind of movie where you're like running for 30 minutes and guns are popping off and you're slicing people up with machetes and what. It's not that movie. So if you think you're going in for that, just set your expectations right now. It is not that. It is a slow burn. When you say slow burn to fans, one half is like, oh, I'm into that. The other half is like, fuck that. I'm not sitting around for a boring movie. It's a slow burn. It's an hour and 34 minutes. It does drag a little bit, but I think the themes in this one are different and they tackled it in a slightly different way. And one of my biggest criticisms of a lot of horror films in this past year or two has been like the grief trauma candy. I'm getting kind of over it. This movie tackles, I won't say grief, but it tackles loss in a much different way, and I really
Yeah.
appreciated that.
Oh, I really appreciate that. And we'll get to more of that in spoilers when we start digging into the how and why. But I think that's actually kind of I think that's the main reason I really like this movie. But you're very much right that I would, here's how I would compare it. is it like if it was marketed as a war movie and what you got was a war drama? So you didn't actually see the war, you saw what was going on under the war, what was happening out just on the side of the war where the bombs are going off back there somewhere. We're slowly walking through the wreckage of like an, I'm not saying literally, I'm just kind of metaphorically speaking. We're walking through the wreckage and the fallout of war and learning about how people are moving through that quietly. That's what this movie is. I'll credit a buddy and a great film, really solid filmmaker, Dave Beckerman, who is a sometime listener of the podcast. He called this a zomdram, and I was like, "That's exactly correct. It's a zombie drama. It really is a drama movie. If you took out the zombie aspect of this movie, you could have just set this in like a war torn area. This could have been in a war torn Tasmania instead of zombie riddled Tasmania or something like that. Like you could have just done that, and this movie would have the exact same kind of impact. Where as you ran into people, they weren't zombies; they were just victims of the tragedy of war. Like that, literally, you could just replace it that way. And this is just all a big setup for expectations, just to for our audience, because I think some people are going to see those trailers and be completely like fooled by what they see in the trailer. But thematically speaking, I do love this movie. I genuinely do. I just I hadn't seen it approached this way before, and I guess at some point here, Damon, we're probably going to have to dip into spoilers. Otherwise, we talk in circles. Is there anything else you wanted to touch on before we get into spoilers?
Well, I really just want to point out that like there's a lot to like about this movie, but there are definitely things I don't like. And when I say slow burn, which I said is kind of a trigger warning because some people hear that and they're like, "Oh, run away from the theater." It is a slow burn, and I'm not going to lie to you and say for me personally, there weren't some. I hate to use the word boring, but there were a few boring moments where I'm like, okay, we could have, and there's one plot point specifically that I'll get into it with spoilers that I really didn't like because it felt thematically just too tropey. I've seen it too many times. And I was like, for all the unique things and all the things I did enjoy about this movie, there's one thing in particular with the plot of this one that bugged me and I was like, not again. And that kind of that goes back to my trauma candy thing where I'm not saying this is trauma candy. This is not like this is a film just focused on grief and loss. But I've said that, and going back to my biggest criticism of Bring Her Back, like, and I still love the Philippi brothers. Let me just preface that by saying it, but I just felt like, man, I've seen this done so many times. I know they're taking a different approach to it, but God, I'm just so kind of tired of the like we lost somebody and we're just mired in that grief. Now I understand it's a very popular trope in horror, and I get why you do
Yeah,
it.
I was gonna say,
But
buckle up, Damon. There's gonna be a lot of those.
but remember that time, like, and I know this is like a much different genre. Remember that time for like 4 or 5 years there when like True Blood was really big and Vampire Diaries was really big, and like vampires were just everywhere, like
Yeah.
movies, TV, and it just got overdone and it kind of died out. And now we're kind of now there's been a Nosferatu came out, and there's a new Dracula movie coming out. There's other things coming out, but like that oversaturation of vampire movies, kind of like, oh, we love it, and then after like 3 years, like, all right, enough's enough, get rid of this shit. That was me with the trauma candy movies over the past like couple of years. I just got sick of the same theme over and over again. My mom died, my dad died, and somehow that's going to relate back to the horror movie we're telling. I'm just like, there's got to be other stories to tell. Uh, this movie does tackle the themes in this movie, the relationship drama, and by the way, credit for Zom drama. That's a great name.
Yes.
I think it's a very accurate portrayal of this. But I will say, like I said, there's one plot point that I don't want to spoil for people. But so if you're listening to this, like, I'm just telling you ahead of time, there's one plot point in this movie that really bugs me, and I don't want to say it because it's going to it's going to spoil the movie. So I won't say it here, but I will tell you that. And if you know me or you've listened to this podcast for more than a few episodes, you're probably like, I could probably point out what you're gonna complain about. But overall, this is a solid enough movie. I do feel like even for an hour and 34 minutes, there are moments that drag in this movie. I feel like there may be some editing here and there that could have just helped carve out like 10 minutes of this movie to make it feel a little bit more impactful in the way it does. Like, it does kind of hit the pause button a few times where it's like, all right, like there are moments where I could be like, yeah, I could go grab a drink and come back, and I really feel like I didn't miss a whole lot. There's a couple of those moments in this movie where it kind of drags a little bit, and so there's gonna be people who see this and say, man, I was bored. I'm telling you right now, there are going to be people who see this movie and say I was bored, and I think that also goes into like the expectation of think you're walking into like a zombie firefight, which once
Right.
again, that's not what this movie is. But this was I got to give credit to Zach Hilditch for the creativity and what I'm going to call originality in what has been a very overwrought genre, and I think, listen, when you talk about the biggies, you talk about slashers, you talk about vampires, you talk about werewolves, you talk about zombies, like some of the biggest genres in horror. To me, and that was my, you know this, that was one of my biggest criticisms why I didn't really enjoy Nosferatu. He stuck, why am I, Robert Eggers stuck so closely to the original Dracula mythology, which is what Nosferatu is, that I was bored. I was like, I've seen this before. I've seen 1,000 versions of this before. I understand you're trying to be accurate to the original book, which Nosferatu is totally a ripoff of Dracula. I get it. And you want to be faithful to that. And I appreciate Robert Eggers for what he does. And visually, it was a very striking movie. But the story, I was like, I've seen this. I've been here. I've done this. Like, this is a book that's 200 years old or whatever. I've been here and done that before. Give me something I haven't really seen before. And I gotta say, We Bury the Dead does that for zombies. Technically, it's zombie. Like I said, I still refuse to call this a zombie movie. It is a zomdrom. That is a great term. I'm stealing that. Or I would actually argue this is a drom-zom. It's actually a drama first, more than a zombie movie. So they do. So like, there are definitely elements to like about this movie, and like what they did thematically with this movie. But we get into spoilers. I'll give you my true criticism. So do you want to get into spoilers and just get right into this?
Let's get into spoilers, Damon. And I want to remind people in the new year that we have a Patreon, patreon.com/rewind to living dead. You get early releases for this episode, so the patrons are going to get this way earlier than everybody else. But that's not all. We have broken down It Welcome to Derry this season strictly for the patrons, just for them. We also broke down Alien Earth, and if you want to hear me have a meltdown about how terrible that show was, you can tune in on our Patreon. We also have lost episodes there, episodes that never ended up airing from the old school days. Some of those episodes, I I'll pat my own back, Damon, and say we were hilarious. It was very funny to hear us talk about some of these absolutely batshit horror movies from yesteryear. And we also do the Film Core podcast on there. The Film Core podcast is for regular movies. We've done Superman. We've done The Smashing Machine. We did Kill Bill, The Whole Bloody Affair. And guess what? We let the patrons vote on that. We give them 4 movies to choose from. They pick the movie and we talk about it. And it's a lot of fun. I interact there all the time with the patrons. They're a lovely group of people. You can join the Rotten Ones right now. Patreon.com/rewind to living dead. And Damon, on the topic of Zomdroms, I'm going to say one more time, Dave Beckerman has a short film out right now in the festival circuit called Trad, as in Tradwife. It's a phenomenal short film. Dave Beckerman, a very, very solid director, and coined the phrase Zomdrom, which we're going to get into right now.
So, with that being said, if you haven't seen We Buried the Dead, it is in theaters right now. It is a smaller movie, so I assume it's going to be, but it was playing, in every theater close to me, so I'd assume it's going to be playing in most theaters close to you. So, check it out, judge for yourself. But right now, we are going to get into full spoilers. And Patrick, like we've already told, like the plot we told is the plot. Like, I mean, that's not like hiding anything. There's a character named Ava, played by Daisy Ridley, and her husband was on a retreat in Tasmania when a U.S. military accident, which I thought was kind of funny. They used the U.S. military for that. U.S. military was conducting some sort of experiment off the coast of Tasmania. It unleashed some sort of weird gas or bomb. They never really say exactly what it is, but like an accident. And it wiped out the entire population of Tasmania. But in that, some of the people, and by the way, I actually like this most about what I think one of the things I like most about this movie. Right up front, Ava goes to Tasmania because she knows her husband was there on a retreat and she's desperate to reconnect with him, knowing she's been told that everyone on this island is dead. And right away, they tell her, well, the rumors are true. Some of them come back. Like there is no surprise here. I appreciate they just tell you that right up front. Like they're not, you don't show up in the house and they're like, oh shit, these people are awake. No, they tell you, they're like, some people come back. They're very docile. Don't worry about it. You raise a flare, we'll come in, soldiers will come in and take care of it. So, you're good. And these people, the body retrieval units, they're going into house by house, building by building, dragging out the dead bodies to get processed. We have to assume, to be burned or whatever for this island. And so Ava travels there in hopes of eventually getting far enough south to where she can reach the retreat where her husband was at for his work retreat. And she wants to reconnect with her husband, knowing full well he's probably not alive. And that's really where we pick up with this story. And that's, like I said, that doesn't ruin anything for the movie, by the way. It doesn't really tell you anything about the
No.
movie. But that is the premise. Here's where the whole not a zombie thing comes from, Patrick, quote unquote. There are zombies in this movie. There's literally one moment. One moment.
Mhm.
I guess two. So I'm sorry, there's two. Two moments where a zombie is quote unquote threatening. Like,
Yes.
there are two. There's one in a building where Ava and her partner, why am I forgetting
Clay.
his name in the movie? Clay. Her partner Clay have stopped to rest, and they're there, and a zombie comes sprinting at them. Every other zombie we meet in this movie is just like a docile, standing there, clicking their teeth. They're not doing really anything. They're not aggressive. They're just kind of like there. And we learn that the longer these zombies are reanimated, they get more aggressive. So that gives you the premise of like, this could go bad, which, by the way, I almost wish they wouldn't have said that, because I'm like, now you're setting my expectations. We are going to see like a raging zombie horde. You never
Sure.
get that in this movie. But one zombie comes charging at them. A random soldier shows up and shoots it dead. So that's the one. And there's a second one later in the movie when Ava is running from a zombie. She climbs through like a truck to get away from it. And, once again, we kill the zombie. But that's it. Like, literally, there are two harrowing encounters with a zombie in this movie. So I'm saying that up front. So when people go see this movie, they're like, zombie? What? There's no zombie. There are zombies, but there are literally two quote unquote harrowing encounters with zombies. And they're not even really that harrowing, if I'm being honest.
They're not the most harrowing, and I think at least one of them specifically is more of a metaphor for the stages of grief, because what we open this movie with is a memory, and that memory is, I believe, of Ava and her husband Mitch's wedding day, if I'm not
Correct.
mistaken.
Yep.
Yes. Okay. So it's kind of a memory, and we are going to revisit memories of Ava and Mitch a few different times in this movie. Obviously, in the beginning, in the initial kind of catalyst of this movie, you assume, well, it makes sense. She was married to this guy. He died in Tasmania, and she's going down there in hopes to find his body, to find some closure. And closure is a huge theme here, Damon. Closure is probably, honestly, the biggest theme in the movie.
It is the theme.
Yeah. I mean, grief is, I think, the underlying theme, but closure is the big one. The idea of like, she needs closure. But why does she need closure so bad? It's basically a hazardous site. You know what I mean? Like, they say you can't go to the south part of the island. It's the air isn't breathable. It's inhabitable at the moment. So like, you stick to doing the body unit stuff up here. And Ava hatches a plan to sneak away and get to the south. And she finds a road dog, if you will, in this other body retrieval guy named Clay, kind of a studly Australian dude. And you, for a minute there, you're like, oh, is this kind of a will they won't they type situation? Because he's super handsome dude, and you're like, oh, okay, is that what's going on? Not really. He's just sort of the reckless, like gung ho kind of guy who's willing to take that chance with her. So she takes full advantage of that, and they head south in a secretive way. What I found interesting about this is how very much that I would say the first act of the movie, where you're really just getting your head wrapped around everything, is that everybody's going through this loss together. You got the body retrieval people, and then you've got the folks who are coming back to this part of Tasmania to mourn the loss of their loved ones, and some of these people are desperately hoping that the rumor is true and that their loved ones might come back. This is a bit of a mind fuck, where you go, oh, a disaster's happened and it wiped out half a million people. But you're telling me there's a chance that my husband could wake up, that my wife could wake up, that my kid could wake up, that my mom could wake up. And so you got these people that are sort of wringing their hands and hoping that person's going to wake up. It's a very different way in to a zombie movie, for me anyway. I haven't seen a movie quite like that, where there are people literally in the streets, and again, it feels kind of war torn and all that stuff, where like they're moving bodies out of the house, and someone's like, Larry, Larry, can you hear me? You know, like there's like a desperation in that. That's the drama side of it. The drama side of it is just like, fuck, that's if I was put in that scenario, how would I feel if I knew like, oh my God, when my kid might wake up. You can't just cart him off in the back of a truck in a body bag. What if he wakes up? And you realize that's where Ava's at. Ava's thinking, shit, like what if my husband wakes up? Now they do very early on run into a reanimated person. And like you said, they just kind of stand there and chatter their teeth. But Ava, being the central focus of our movie, has sort of this, I say, deeper empathy because some of the soldiers, to them, it's just fodder. You just get in there, you shoot them dead. Don't worry about it. And load them on a truck and burn them. She's not that way. She doesn't have that feeling in her mind. And she's looking for signs of humanity in these people. The first zombie she sees, she doesn't see it. I mean, it just kind of seems like a body just standing there, nothing interacting, nothing happening. But then when her and Clay cut south, they end up on finding a bachelor party that was again snapped in an instant, snapped by this chemical weapon or whatever that made everybody die. So there's a bunch of strippers in there and there's a bunch of guys in there, and one of the strippers wakes up, and she's like, okay, it's one of those ones that wakes up again. And then she says something. I think I want to say like she says hello or so, I can't remember. She just tries to reach out, and the stripper looks at her and responds. And she's like, fuck, like she heard me. She's not just reanimated, she's kind of reacting to me. So that kind of builds this like hope in Ava's brain that like maybe, just maybe, if the farther we go down, I mean, the people farther down haven't been treated for the longest amount of time, maybe they're like awake again. And then it becomes these like steps towards getting towards that because we keep going back to her memories and you realize that her and Mitch left on a sour note and you don't quite know why. And that's a bigger part of the closure for her is you're like, she really wants to, the last moment they talked, he basically didn't even want to talk to her. He was going to Tasmania. He's like, I'm out. I guess I'll see you when I get back. And you realize something's real wrong in their relationship. She's trying to get that last moment back. And so that to me carried me through to the end because I was like, she's looking for humanity again, right? She sees the potential for it. And then I don't know if you want me to keep going because I think that there's a one scene with this military guy Riley. I don't know if you want me to keep going on that or if you want to interject.
Well, I'll just say, I mean, and I want to get to that because that's the part of the movie I really didn't like. But I will say, I think the theme in this movie, as you learn more and more about Ava's backstory with Mitch, and you learn like they were trying to have a baby, she couldn't get pregnant, and there was just a real like gap growing between them. That this trip starts to becoming less about grief and more about guilt because
Yeah.
you had that flashback scene where she's like sitting on the floor and Mitch is packing and she's like, "Would you like me to at least take you to the airport?" He's like, "No." He's like, "I just want to go. I don't really want to talk to you. I don't really want to be here anymore. We need a break." Basically, like it's more or less what Mitch says to her. It's like we need a break from each other, and he takes off. And you mentioned like the grief of that, like wanting closure. That's absolutely the theme. But there's also like a shift as you learn more about their backstory, that the shift goes from grief to guilt because she feels guilty that that's how things ended. And then you learn later on, and this is almost feels minor by the time you get there, that she cheated on him. And so she, like I said, this really does become a theme of guilt. Like she feels really bad that she sent her husband off to a trip to Tasmania, the last place he's ever going to know or live or be, and his last thought was, we didn't have a baby together, my wife cheated on me. And so there's like a guilt there of like wanting that sense of closure with her husband, but it does switch from that grief to guilt in there, and I do think that was very important. But yeah, let's talk about the soldier interaction because this is the section of the movie that I hated. This is honestly like this is the part that lost me with this movie. So go ahead and talk about it. Go ahead and kind of set up here, Patrick. We'll talk about it.
So when they're deep in the South, and again, no one's supposed to be out there, and it's pretty much only military patrolling and just taking care of zombies because the farther down you go, the longer they've been alive, and the longer they've been alive, the more aggressive they are. So it's a genuine danger at that point. You can't just be around them. And as you mentioned, they're in this one, I think a garage or something like that, and a zombie attacks them, and this soldier Riley comes to save the day. And it's a tense moment. And this is not unlike many zombie movies where you have a military guy who's doing his marching orders and then they're in the way because they're doing something else. And so you get an immediate tension between the two parties. And he splits them up and he interrogates Clay. And then he comes back in the morning to get Ava. And she's like, "Where the fuck is Clay?" And he's like, "Oh, he ran out on me." And you don't really believe that because I'll give this to Mark Cole Smith, who plays Riley the soldier. You don't trust him. There's something about his eyes, there's something about the way he speaks. He makes you uneasy. And my wife was watching with me and she was like, "I don't know about that guy. I would get away from that guy if I was her." And sure enough, it's a bad thing. He goes, "Get in my car. You want to go see your husband? Fine, I'll take you down to him. I got guns and stuff. We'll be safe." And so she goes with him reluctantly. And before you know it, they're at his house. And she's like, "Why are we here? What? I thought we need to go." Turns out she's not the only one that's lost somebody. Riley's from Tasmania and he lost his wife. And he wants her to play his wife for just one night. And that's disturbing in its own right. But that's how he's dealing with the grief of losing his wife. He wants Ava to play his wife for one night. And Damon, this part does drag. I'm not going to pretend like it doesn't. But it is interesting because it's showing how everyone else is going through the trauma. If you just stuck with if you just stuck with Ava, you'd kind of only get the one feel for it. But in classic zombie fashion, when there's other people suffering this, they deal with it differently. And sure enough, Riley is dealing with it in what I would consider, Damon, a very unhealthy way.
Oh, very much so. And he makes Ava dress in one of his wife's dresses, and he wants to dance with her. And at one point, you see her pick up a pair of scissors and she puts it under a pillow because we kind of have an assumption of where this is probably going to end up. And that's where my problem with this starts. Now, I understand, and I said, like, thematically, one of the more common tropes in zombie horror movies is learning that humanity is more dangerous than the dead people rising from the grave. We've seen that 100 times over. And by the way, that's not I don't even say that's tropey in a bad way. Like, that's a very commonly recurring theme in the world. Like, yeah, the shit going on around you is really bad, but the person like living next door to you might be the one you really can't trust. And we've talked about this before, Patrick, with certain movies. Like, we don't particularly love, or at least I don't particularly love, when sexual assault becomes like a theme or like a story plot point, unless it really makes sense to the movie. Sometimes it feels like in a much different way. It feels kind of like, just, oh, my mom died, so that's the catalyst. Sexual assault to me, like, that is such a sensitive, awful subject that I'm like, don't use it unless it absolutely serves a purpose. Now, to their credit, they don't ever get to that point with Riley. Like, he's kind of, but you kind of, I mean, if you watch, there's zero chance that you watch that scene and think that's not where it's leading, right? Like, I don't care.
There's an implication there, but I think it stops well short of that. Like,
it
well
does,
short of that.
But if you're watching the movie and you see him creepily asking her to get into her dress and wear her red,
yeah, you feel not good about that. Yeah,
you 1,000% believe that's where it's going. It's a power dynamic when she's like, "Hey, I want to go," and he's like, "No, you can't go." That's what I'm saying. Like, it's a power dynamic. It 100% leads you into the idea that he is going to hurt her in some way. And that bugs me. And it's not because it's poorly done or poorly acted. And like I said, I actually give them credit for the idea of like him wanting her to pose as his wife. He wants to have a dance with her or whatever. It's a little different, but it just felt so unnecessary to this story. And I get it. Like, once again, the zombies aren't the real catalyst of evil or the catalyst of bad things happening in this movie. It's actually, once again, it's humanity. And I get it. I don't know. There was just something about that whole, like, and you're right, and it dragged on for a little too long, and it just raises so many red flags. Like, why would you try? And I get it. Once again, it's a power dynamic. She's by herself. He's the soldier. Hey, come with me. I'll help you. She didn't really have a lot of choice in the matter. She's like, I guess
Right.
I understand all that. And then when you get to the house, like I said, I immediately was like, I know where they're going with this. Now, granted, they did kind of switch it up a little bit with the whole pose as the wife thing, but the implication is there. And there's no way you weren't thinking that. It's like, I understand they do go in a different direction, but there's no way anybody watching this scene of him, oh, we'll leave in 10 minutes. We'll leave soon.
Oh
Just come
yeah.
to my head. You like in your back of your head, you have to know where you think this is going, right? Like this is going
Oh
to
no,
end badly.
absolutely. That's the dread of the scene. And I'm with you. I really don't like sexual assault in movies. It really bugs me. I don't like you, and I think a lot of more movies actually use it. They show it, and there's no need. I
No.
think Zach Hildish is very clear. He's like, there's no need to even get near it. You understand that she's unsafe being around him, and there's a whole other half of that scene, which is probably what makes it feel like it drags on, which is he's very much focused on the fact that they were going to have a child together, and
Yeah.
that she died before that could happen. So there's this looming threat deep in the darkness of this scene where you're like, oh God, she needs to get out of here before this thing gets too far. It really stops, and I say well before that. I mean, well, it never gets sexual ever. The entire scene never gets sexual. He stops because she's not wearing the wedding ring that he asked her to wear. Everything on her had to be perfect, and she wasn't wearing the wedding ring, and she was like, I'm not taking my ring off. Now, in a situation like that, it's like, lady, take the fucking ring off. He's got a gun. He's super dangerous. But it's showing in that moment that her grief and her need for closure with her husband is actually putting her in peril in this situation because she's refusing to take this ring off. It's not a big ask in a dangerous situation like this. Like all you gotta do is take it off. He's not telling you to throw it in the toilet. But she wouldn't do it. And he was stuck wherever it was going, and it never went there, thankfully. Wherever it was going, he was stuck on that detail because it
Yeah.
wasn't about her. It was about reliving a moment with his wife. And she was the proxy for it, but she wasn't the perfect proxy because he was cracked. He was cracked. And because of what had happened, because of this tragedy that had broken him. So I applaud Zach Hilditch for not going there because I would have thrown this movie out the window. I'd be like, you don't need to show that shit. But is it a looming threat in the background? Yes, and it's only ever like it's in your mind, it's in Damon's mind, it's in my mind, it's in my wife's mind. Like I don't know where this is going, but I feel like you need to leave as soon as possible.
And
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 sure enough,
And
yeah, go ahead.
well, no, I was just going to say, and I think that like one of the things I enjoyed most about this movie was the creativity and the difference. Like I said, I got so tired of the trauma candy movies. This one dealing with grief in a different way and guilt, as we learned, kind of being really the thing. Guilt is actually the driving force, but even more. I think guilt is the driving force even more than grief. By the time you get to the end of the
Oh,
movie,
I think it's
and you're
guilt and closure. Yeah, she's
yeah,
guilty and she needs closure for that guilt.
yeah,
A hundred percent.
it's not even really about grief as much as it is about the guilt she feels about the way she left things with her husband, and now she needs closure for that. I love that. I actually really like that theme. The ending itself, we'll get to in a minute, that I thought was kind of hokey and kind of dumb, but we'll talk about that in a second. But I just like I just when I saw that, and like I said, the way it played out, you're right. It stopped before anything got there, and but we all were thinking it. There's no way you weren't. She's alone with this weird, creepy guy. He's making her dress as her wife. I mean, and so that's what I'm saying. Like for all the creativity and differences that this movie got right, and when I say it's my biggest problem in the movie, this section takes like 30 minutes. It's a really long, drawn out scene where she's like by himself, driving to his place. He lies to her and says he's taking her to a different place. Then, like, they get inside his bed and breakfast, and she looks around. She sees photos of him with his family. She's like, so this is your house? And, like, it just drags on. And then, like I said, that underlying tension of, like, you know where this is going. Now, having her dress up as his wife and doing a dance, but still, there's no way you're watching this scene and not being like, we know where this is going to end up. It doesn't, thankfully, and
Yeah,
Zach
thankfully.
Hildish saying thankfully not going there. But I'm just saying, like, for all the creativity and the differences that I think this movie got right, that one just felt like the tropiest easy like path to walk down for this kind of a movie, you know. And you could put and this isn't even a zombie apocalypse. This is any horror movie. This is any war torn drama. This is any movie where you put a woman alone in danger and peril with a creepy dude. And
Every woman listening goes, "Yeah, that's what it's like to be in the room alone with any man."
and I'm like, there's like the reality of that is what women go through every day, like
Every day.
every single day. So I'm not saying you shouldn't point it out. 100% you should. We need to call out the shit that actually happens, these horrible, horrific things that happen to women every single day on this planet. I'm getting pissed off even thinking about it. But in movies, it just, once again, it feels like, is it being used for the right reason? And in this
I mean, I think I would like to ask a woman what they thought about that scene. We're two guys,
yeah,
but I think we're all getting the same impression. And
yeah,
my wife's impression is the only one I can pull from right away, which was like, get away from this guy before anything weirder already. He was weird
yeah,
when I looked at him. Never
yeah.
mind weird when I had to get in a car with him. So like I think we're exhausting ourselves because truth be told, we can't fit in a woman's shoes. So I'd much rather hear what a woman had to say about that scene. But I'm just
Yeah.
glad that they didn't go there because that
I
would have completely turned me off.
it turned my stomach in that moment. I'm just like, not again. Let's not go down this road. Like I hate it being portrayed in that way on film. Like to me, it's got to be, you got to use, like, if you're going to use that in a film, it's got to be used the right way. It's got to be used with the right message. And I don't know. It just dragged on, and yes, there was tension there, but tension for the wrong reason. Like, it was tension like, please don't let this happen to Ava. And I understand that's what you're going for, but it's like,
Yeah.
you got so much else right in this movie. Why do we need to necessarily travel down that road? And as you mentioned, and I agree, it did drag on. It dragged. That was the scene that really dragged this movie down. Now, once Ava, you know, basically tells him, I'm not putting on the fucking ring, fuck you, dude, and she smashes him over the head with a vase or something, she runs out, and she ends up in a room where she finds his wife on a bed, still pregnant, and she's not alive, or you don't think she's alive in that moment, and you're like, oh, so he's basically preserved his wife in hopes that she comes back. Oh shit, this guy really is a sick,
And
twisted fuck.
he's keeping reanimated people in the barn, and he's testing them, and he's taking notes on them. He's trying to see when and how and if she can come back.
Yeah, so there, like I said, I just feel like the like, I almost feel like it would have, I know it sounds weird, like, I don't know another avenue you travel down with a woman in peril with a creepy dude, but I feel like creatively you gotta find, like, if there was just some other way in here. I don't know what it could have
Ta
been.
Take the
Maybe
dude
it's
out of the situation. That I think
maybe
that
it's
any woman would tell you, just stop having a
or
woman and a man alone together and make it a
or
woman.
yeah, I was just gonna say, make it the wife. Like, you know, you would have a much more trusting instinct that the wife is just like, I can help. She's a soldier, and she's like, I can help you through this, but we're gonna. You know, I need to go pick up a few things. You go back to her house, and she realizes like she's still dealing with the trauma of losing her husband. Then there's a little parallel there, like how she dealt with grief of losing her husband versus the way Ava's dealing with it. I think that would have just been a smarter, different choice that I would have enjoyed more. It doesn't ruin the movie, and it doesn't make me hate this movie by any stretch of the imagination, but it just felt like I've seen this before, and it's almost like, man, you got so much right about this movie, then you had to stick in that section where it's like, uh-oh, woman in peril with a guy, creepy situation. And it's just like, I've seen this done. If you're going to do it differently, you're going to make an impact. I get it, but it just, I don't know. It just didn't work for me in that scene. I'm not saying it's bad, poorly acted, poorly executed. It did drag on. I felt like they could have cut out about 10 minutes of that. It didn't need to be like 30 minutes of the movie or whatever, 25 minutes of the movie it did end up being. Because like I said, it takes away from the overall thematic strength of this movie, because then you're
I,
switching it to like,
I would disagree. I think it's very on theme with the movie. I think it's all about how he's processing his
no,
grief and his loss. I do think it's very on theme, actually. It's just he's perverted what she's after. You know,
yeah.
like she's after real closure. He's not letting go. He doesn't even know how to let go. He's to the point where he wants someone to dress up in his wife's clothing, wear her perfume, smoke her cigarettes, wear
Right.
her
Like,
ring.
I think,
Like he really can't let go. He's broken by it.
let me give you a little rewrite of Living Dead. And I hate doing this, but let me do it like this, just to give you a little sense of what could be different about this scene. we learned that Ava is a physical therapist. That's one, like, and it
Yeah.
doesn't really play. It doesn't really play any major part in this movie outside of her giving Clay a shoulder rub when he's like talking about his shoulder hurting, which is kind of a funny scene. But if you just make her a nurse, make her a nurse, and he's bringing her back there because he's convinced his wife is going to give birth to their baby. She's dead.
Yeah, you
So
can't leave until she has this baby. Like,
yeah, so if
like I
that's
need you here in your specialty here. Yeah.
yeah, I think that would have given it a little bit more strength. You know, like then we're not just that overwrought tension of like, oh man, you know, this is going to go. And I like they never go there, and applaud them for doing that. But like you said, there's no way you're watching that not thinking that's where it's going. If she says right up front, or not up front, but like when he gets her there, kind of trapped in the house, she's like, "We need to go." He's like, "Oh, hold on now. My wife's upstairs pregnant. I need you to help her. I'm sorry I lied to you." And then she walks in and the freaking wife's dead.
Yeah.
That's a pretty horrifying scene. You know what I mean? Then you're not stuck in that mindset of like, oh, he's going to do terrible things to her.
Every woman listening is going, "No, we're still thinking that.
Well, no,
Don't
I
you
know,
worry, Damon. We're
but you
still
know what
thinking
I'm
that."
saying? Like
Yes,
that's not
yes.
like in this scene that is dripping throughout this entire scene. As you
No,
know,
it is. It is. Yeah.
and,
And
and
he's
at least
processing his grief in a very perverted
if
way.
you have it set up to where she's a nurse and he's there desperate for his wife to have care, and then like now she's got to manipulate him in a totally different way because he's convinced she's going to help his dead wife give birth to their baby. How the fuck do you get out of that situation when he's just like, no, we'll go when she has the baby? Now, in your head, you're like, she's dead, dude. There's no baby coming out of her that's going to be alive. We'll talk about how that actually switches later in the movie, but like that to me would have diffused that tension
Sure.
and added a different level of tension, a different layer of tension versus, oh yeah, he's going to do a horrible thing to her and we're all going to have to turn our eyes away and it's going to be bad and graphic and yeah, whatever. So, like I said, I just wish it had gone down a different route because we've seen this before and I hate when that is the trope that's being used. To me, it needs to be more impactful in a different way. And this to me felt very generic. And like I've seen this before. I don't need this. Like it just I don't know. To me, it felt very tropey in a bad way, and the tension I felt was I mean, obviously the tension I felt was probably ratcheted up 1,000-fold for any woman because obviously they unfortunately lived through this situation 1,000 times over more than we ever will, or ever could. But yeah, I don't know. I just didn't love it. I just didn't love that being used in there in that way. I feel like having her be a nurse and like her, you know, you need to help my wife. At least would have given me a little different layer where I'm not just sitting there thinking, oh yeah, I know where this is going to end up and it's going to be bad.
There's a scene right after this. She gets away from him, by the way. I think she stabs him, kills him, if I'm not mistaken. But there's a scene right after this I really want to talk about. So I think there is a moment where you mentioned where she gets attacked by a more rabid zombie, gets away from him rather easily, has to kill him, and then she moves on, and she finds this RV, and this to me, this is the most touching part of the movie. Like I almost wish this was the end of the movie. She gets to this RV and there's a family dead there, and so she drags them all out and she rests in the RV for the night so she has shelter and protection. And in the middle of the night she starts to hear something and she gets up to investigate. And the father of this family reanimated and he's digging a ditch and he turns to look at her and there is something behind his eyes. He's awake, he's conscious, but he's not. He'll never be himself again. And I really, this is my favorite scene in the whole movie. Truly, she realizes in that moment that there is humanity still in these people because what he's doing is he's awoken and he looks around him and he sees his dead family, and the only thing he can think about doing is burying them, is giving them the closure they deserve. They shouldn't rot out in the wilderness. I need to dig this hole for my family. I need to bury them. She grabs a shovel, she helps him, and they bury his family, and then he kneels in that grave and she ends him because he, without ever saying words, he's saying with his eyes and with his actions, I don't want to go on like this. Whatever this is, it's not going to work. You know, I'm irreparably damaged from what happened.
There's
And
no coming back from this.
there's no coming back from this. And she mercy kills him. She kills him and she buries the entire family. She leaves like a headstone. Or no, actually, she leaves his ID card on top of it.
Yeah.
So if someone comes by, they know who's buried in this grave. To me, this is the best moment in the entire film because it's confirmation for what she was suspecting, which is there still humanity left in these people? The answer is absolutely yes. But the reality is there's no coming back. Like the damage is done. So whatever I find when I finally get to that retreat doesn't really matter. My husband could be alive, he could be dead. It won't matter. It's not my husband anymore. It's what's left of him. It's going to be the echoes of whatever was left of him. I loved that scene, Damon. That scene was so fucking awesome. And I was like, wow, I've never seen a zombie movie portray humanity the way this moment does. And it's so simple. There was nothing, and words unsaid. I mean, she doesn't talk to the zombie. I'm looking at you, Land of the Dead. They never exchange words. Everything is in the actions. That's great filmmaking. It's great filmmaking when you could turn the sound off and you know everything is happening in that moment. And that, to me, Damon, that's the crowning jewel of We Bury the Dead. And
That is
apropos, by the way, that's also the title of the movie.
That, by the way, is the best scene in the movie by a wide margin. That's not to say the rest of the movie's bad. I'm just saying, like, that is the scene that really defines what this movie should be and what it could have been in terms of, like, some of the mistakes I talked about they made. That it's a beautiful scene because she wakes up, she's terrified. There's someone crawling around the outside of the RV. And even, like, you see, like, a shadowy version of someone walking by. Oh, fuck, did the fucking soldier guy wake up and he's not dead? They
Right.
come back for what's going on here. And then you just look outside and you see the zombie dad is digging a hole for his family, and she looks at him, he looks back at her, they don't exchange words, they just exchange a glance, and then you see she literally walks over and she's helping him dig the grave. And it's a pretty poignant, pretty powerful scene. And as you said, at the end, he just kind of crawls in and he's like waiting to die because he wants to die with his family, and she puts him out of his misery. And it is. That is the antithesis of what this movie should be, is that moment. Like, there is still some humanity left in these people, but they're never going to be the same again. There's no coming back from this. And so he just wants his own version of closure, which is what she's seeking with him.
Yes.
And it's a beautiful scene, and it really is the best part of this movie. Now, let's get to the ending because this is where it once again kind of falls apart for me. So Ava eventually reconnects with Clay, which, by the way, like, I'm just like pointing this out. Like, they say Clay escaped. I'm like, why would you not go back looking for her? And like, not like he pops back up at the resort because he knows that's where she was going to end up. She wanted to go to this
Right.
Enzo resort where her husband was. So that's where they eventually meet up. Clay goes there to meet her. But in my head, I'm just like Clay ultimately seems like kind of a good dude. He tells a story about like how he was trying to impress his ex-wife by going there. She basically called him a selfish bastard, and they broke up and they divorced, and he doesn't get to see her or his daughter. And he basically says, I'm going to go to Tasmania and be a selfless guy. I'm going to help put away the bodies. I'm going to help save the dead or bury the dead. And his wife is still like, no, you're still a piece of shit. And he's like, well, I'm going anyways. So he's trying to have like a little bit of a redemption tour for his own family. So him showing up there at the resort, knowing that's where Ava's going to end up, it's a very sweet moment, and he's there to help her once again. But in the back of my head, I'm like, dude, couldn't you have hung out for a little bit? Just maybe see where this creepy ass
scoped out, right?
Yeah. Anyways, so they get to the resort. And they're searching around. Of course, Ava's looking, and she eventually gets to the room where she finds her husband, Mitch. And he, of course, is very much dead, and he is not reanimated. But while she's there, she finds the ID card of one of his coworkers, a couple bottles of wine, a couple of glasses, and you realize pretty quickly that he was having an affair in Tasmania with one of his coworkers. But that's also where you get the bigger revelation, which is they couldn't have a child. They tried, was it IVF or whatever? They tried, they tried all that, didn't work. And then she reveals she cheated on him. I slept with someone else he found out about, and that's really what caused the gap in our relationship when he decided to basically fuck off and go to Tasmania and said, I only want you to drive me to the airport. So, like, I actually appreciated that part of the story because they didn't make it the tropey thing of like, oh, the husband's a piece of shit, ultimately. Like, she's like, no, I did this. I cheated on him and told him about it, and, like, he had to go off and, and he actually, like, as she's having her final conversation with her husband, she's like, she was really pretty. Like, I get it. Like, I understand I fucked you over and you're, and so that is a really cool moment and actually like perfect closure for what you really find out is a totally fractured kind of broken relationship. Like they were not happy. Like you get the sense early on they were happy and in love and married, and then as the movie goes on, time goes on, you realize this is a pretty fragmented relationship. And then by the time you get to the hotel and you see Mitch that he was boning one of his coworkers and she cheated on him, you realize these two were just not, that this was never going to work out. And like I said, that's the guilt part of it. Like she didn't want her last conversation with him to be, I cheated on you, we're not having a baby, I don't know where we go from here. And he's like, I'm going on my trip. I don't want you nearby. I don't want you to drive me. I don't want to talk to you. I just want to be alone. I want to be away from you. She didn't want that to be their final interaction. And so it's almost like she forgives him in that moment. Like, you cheated on me. Well, I did it to you first. And we just, this is like a cathartic moment of moving on.
Yeah.
I loved all that. So then she hops back in the car. Or, I can't remember, on the motorcycle at this point.
I can't remember.
They're in a Jeep. They're a Jeep and they're driving back and they're like, all right, I got my closure. We're good. We're going to go back. And by the way, they never go down that road of like Clay and Ava hooking up.
They never hook up.
That.
Good.
They go back and they're driving and they get back to where the bed and breakfast is, where Riley and his family were once at. And while they're driving, they come to the road and there is Riley's dead wife. She has reanimated and she's standing there and there's blood all down the front of her dress. And Clay's like, oh, we'll go around her. I'll put her out of her misery. And she's like, no, stop. And she goes and she sees the wife, and the wife is just kind of like standing there, and kind of the same thing, not charging at them, not trying to bite them, nothing like that. And then you hear her crying in the distance, and Ava runs over and she finds that the dead zombie wife has given birth to a perfectly healthy little baby. Riley's child actually was alive. And she wraps it up in a blanket, or like I think it's Clay's jacket or whatever, and that's how the movie ends. She got her baby, and she's going to take the baby back with her. I fucking hated that. I hated that entire. It was so sappy and stupid. I hated that ending. It didn't ruin the movie. I still liked a lot about this movie, but I fucking hated that ending.
So I love everything about it. I loved everything about that scene. I loved that the reanimated mom, all she can do is just stand in the road and look that direction. Like she mustered whatever possible strength she had left in her mind to go there and save it. Which is, by the way, I don't want to spoil this movie, but there's a movie we loved last year that did essentially that in a different way. But I won't ruin it in case someone hasn't seen that movie yet, because it's a big part of that movie. The only thing I didn't like about it is I go, why the fuck does she get a baby? It's not like what my point is like, if the movie had been, we were going through a rough patch in our marriage and they never talked about a baby,
100%.
I'd be like, wow, love that. 100%. Like there's a symbol for your, for the two of you.
I don't want to. I want to. You're 1,000. That's what. If they never brought up the whole IVF, we tried to have a baby shit.
Yes,
that ruined it for me.
That's the only thing. But everything about it, like again, the execution. It's a beautiful scene too. She goes running through this meadow, and it's fucking gorgeous. Like Jesus Christ, they did a really good job. If we haven't said it, it's a cinematically very beautiful movie. It's a great big screen movie to watch. So everything about the scene is beautiful. I was just like, but on principle, like she shouldn't get a baby, and just from what they've told us, she cheated on him first, maybe because he was infertile. I don't know. They don't spell it out, but in the implications, I go, maybe that's why she stepped out. She's like, maybe if I fuck somebody else, they'll get me pregnant. Like maybe that's what it was. And so I go, you don't deserve a baby. No offense, Ava. Like I like Daisy and everything, but you're not Daisy. You're Ava, and Ava doesn't get to have the prize at the end. Like that's, to me, that was the only thing I didn't like. I was like, she doesn't get a reward. The reward was the closure with her husband. She doesn't get this reward. That's not okay. But at the end of the day, like I can say, well, everything that was set up was paid off. I just didn't like the payoff because I don't think she deserved to. She didn't deserve that kind of a happy ending.
And that's why I said it felt so hokey and like very Lifetime or Hallmark movie. like the entire, because at the beginning, you don't know about the cheating stuff. You just know they were trying to have a baby and they couldn't have a baby. And that was fine. If that was the gap between them, that was the bridge that could not be rebuilt. But then they add in the extra layer of like she cheated on him, and then he cheated on her, and then when she basically forgives him, like, hey, our relationship was broken. I forgive you. I hope you forgive me for doing what I did. We were destined to not be together anyways, but now we've kind of had that closure together. That was all fine. But then when you inject that dumb ending where she gets a baby, I'm just like, all right, come on
Yeah.
now. Like, I would have been much better off if they were just like, it was a toxic relationship. They had a falling out. She cheated on him. That's all you needed. She
Yeah.
cheated on him, and you don't have to like all you have to do, like because they show a part where she's got a pregnancy test and she shows it's negative. And
Right.
it's like, don't worry, it's going to happen.
Yeah.
All they had to do was just much like the whole thing talking about like the soldier with the nurse thing, just have her. Like, she cheated on him. She had a bad night and something awful happened and she cheated on him. She's feeling guilty about that. And that could have been the catalyst to, like, I need time alone. I need a break from you. And then she goes there and realizes, like, he did to her what she already did to him. And then on the way out, they find a baby and she's like, I can start anew and try to give this life a better life. I'm not saying it would have been great. It would have still felt a little hallmarky that, like, oh, there's
a little bit.
But that pissed me off. I'm like, come on. Like, that's just so, oh, you can't have a baby. That's what fractured your relationship. And now, oh, magically you get a baby before you leave. I was just like, that's so hokey. Come on.
I do wonder if it's because you and I are not big fans of kids. Yes, I do have two children, but I have tolerance for only two children. Trust me. I wonder if it's just because you that's how you and I feel about kids, where other people are just like, no, but she gets to have a kid in the end. I'm like, oh God. Oh God, why does she get to have a kid? You know, like it. That's the only thing that rubbed me the wrong way. It wasn't even how the sequence played out. Nothing. I loved how everything played out. It was the implication. It was the principle of the matter. I was just like that. I don't like that.
It just felt so, like I said, it felt so hallmarky. Like, I went there, I had closure with my husband, the grief is gone, the guilt is gone, I put it all behind me, ready to move on with my life, and oh, now I get the one thing that was like, the cause of the first, crack in our relationship. I get a baby. I'm just like, come on.
Come on.
Like, that would be like the other version of that, Patrick, and tell me this isn't the exact same thing. She goes through all this. She goes through all the turmoil to get there. She gets to the hotel, and her husband's the one person alive. You know what I mean?
Like, he was like completely alive.
He's the one guy. Like, he hid in the basement and he got away with it. You're like, oh, they're reunited. Like, that would piss me off. I'm like, come on, you're telling us the entire.
But they didn't do that,
dead.
thankfully.
No, they didn't. But that's kind of what it felt like. Like, oh, all this other shit's fucked up, but yeah, you're still gonna get a baby out of this. I was like, come on. Like, that's just so. That, like I said, the entire island being dead. She shows up and her husband's the one guy who made it. I'm like, come on. Like, they didn't do that. It felt similar.
Something just dawned on me though. Because we talked about how her and Clay never get together, right? And in the end, they kind of just like they solidify their bond as people who went through this together. But Clay's baby mama wants nothing to do with him and doesn't want him seeing her daughter. He went through hell to get Ava back, and now Ava's got this little baby. And I'm like, oh, maybe it's not Ava who got the reward. Maybe it's Clay. Like, I don't know. Like, now that I think about it, Clay doesn't enter into it because the final image is literally her staring at the baby. So Clay doesn't actually factor into it. But if I wanted to justify it in my head, I go, hey, Clay gets a family that he wanted that he wasn't going to be able to get. So happy ending for Clay, which, by the way, for the most part, seemed to be a decent guy.
Yeah, no, and that once again was like, I appreciate they didn't go down that track of like, oh, we're together, we're a man and woman together, we get to be friendly, we must get together. No,
right? No, they never play that up, and he's too handsome to get everything anyway. I'm like, God damn it, don't get everything. The man's an Adonis, you know what I mean? I'm just like, don't you get everything? But yes, he did. In the end, I think the implication there, which I am okay with, is that maybe Clay gets a chance to restart with this good woman. Clearly Ava's a good woman who made a mistake and a baby and all that stuff. I'm like, oh, okay, well, I guess happy ending for Clay. I can't be mad at that.
Yeah, I hated that, the hokiness of it all. I was just like, come on. Like, cause you had had like outside of the soldier scene, which I didn't love, but everything else worked really well. And the guilt over grief, all that, and like the revelation, I loved all that stuff. And then like, oh yeah, by the way, here's your baby you desperately wanted, and that's what broke up your marriage. I'm like, Jesus Christ. So, anyways, Patrick, let's get into some categories as we talk about We Bury the Dead. And let's kick things off as we do each and every week here on the show. And let's talk about best performance. So when it comes to We Bury the Dead, who gets your vote for best performance?
Damon, my best performance goes to our star Daisy Ridley, who played Ava. I haven't seen Daisy in a ton of stuff outside of Star Wars. I know she does a lot of theater. She does a lot of smaller films that are usually play for UK audiences and stuff like that. I loved her in this, and I was like, she's the right woman for the job. She had that natural empathy that I think the character needed. The character needed to care for people, and you wanted to feel bad about her mistake, and she feels bad about her mistake. All of those little nuanced complications that make her human, really truly human. She's imperfect, but also a good person, a genuinely good person that you want to see get through this. Daisy carried that really well.
Yeah, she's solid. I will say she might, and this is not me giving acting lessons by any stretch of the imagination, because I'm certainly not an actor myself. She could probably do a little work on her American accent. There's a couple little
I
hairy.
swear, in the beginning, she has a full blown English accent in the beginning, and then the rest of the movie she doesn't.
I was like, is she American? I think. And yeah, there are a couple rough moments there, but overall, yeah, Daisy Ridley's solid. She does a great job in this movie. And yeah, I think I've seen her in like one other movie that's not Star Wars. And maybe that's rubbed me the wrong way because most of the Star Wars movies she was in were god awful. Not her fault, by the way. She was
Right.
fine. I'm just saying like, the movies were god awful. But yeah, I thought she was great. But for me, Patrick, I gave my best performance to Brendan Thwaites as Clay. Now, I didn't realize I actually did know him from before. He was in a show on HBO Max called Titans. It was an adaptation of the Teen Titans DC series, and he played Nightwing, Dick
Oh,
Grayson. When I saw that name, I was like, where do I know that name from? I was like, oh, he played Dick Grayson. He played Nightwing in that show, which is a pretty solid show, by the way. I never finished it. The guy who plays Jack Reacher, Alan Richson, was in that before he became Reacher.
was
It's
he
a pretty
Batman
solid
in
show.
that?
No, he's Hawk and Dove. It's a
Oh,
couple,
yeah.
girl and a boy character, and he plays Hawk.
Okay.
So yeah, but like it's a pretty solid show, and he's very clean cut, and he's playing Dick Grayson. He's playing Batman's former ward, now turned Nightwing. And I was like, where do I know that name from? I looked, I was like, oh, that's him. So I really like Brendan Thwaites, and he had what I loved about his character and the development in this movie, which I think was one of the strongest parts of this movie. When you meet him, he's the guy with the sledgehammer smashing in doors and just doesn't seem to give a fuck about these people he's carrying out. He's like, oh man, here's a fat one. We gotta drag her out of here. Like he just seems so like, and the entire time, Ava is like mourning every loss as part of her
Yeah.
own loss because she's like she knows like what's going on with her husband, and like every time she runs across one of the dead people, she's just like it's almost like she needs a funeral for them as much as she's going to eventually have a funeral for her husband. And meanwhile, here's Clay like, let's just grab this fat fuck and pull him out of here and get done. But by the end of the movie, you realize like he talks about like his wife and trying like basically faking being a good person so he could prove something to her. But then he's like, I'm gonna come anyways. And by the end of the movie, you do see that like empathetic growth in him, that level of like maturity that he has throughout this entire experience of like, yeah, this is more than me just like dragging dead bodies out into the world to get dragged off and get burnt or whatever. So I really liked his character development, and he played a perfect counter to Ava's kind of, I won't say mousy because she's very powerful in this movie, but like very quiet, subdued character, and he's very loud and boisterous. So they were like a perfect 1-2 combo.
Yeah, good contrast there. I really dug him, as this sort of like Hesher, in the beginning,
Um,
who's just sort of like, yeah, I don't give a fuck about this shit. I'm just trying to do the job. But he also helps her break down a few walls because she's kind of pinned up because of the situation, and clearly she's not used to what's going on there. And he's almost like a comfort blanket for her, and it really works out really well.
Yeah. Let's talk about MVP, Patrick. So when it comes to our Ken Foray Banana Hammock MVP award, named after great character actor Ken Foray from the movie From Beyond, which we were just discussing with our producer friend Real Dumb, a movie where Ken Foray jumps down a flight of stairs and into a basement to kill a creature wearing nothing more than a thong bikini. If that's not an MVP performance, I don't know what is. So Patrick, when it comes to We Bury the Dead, who gets your MVP?
My MVP goes to writer director Zach Hilditch. I didn't know his work before. I think he's clearly very talented. I mean, it's a beautifully made film. I think the choices are everything here, Damon, because this is not your first Zomdram. You've seen a few. I liken this to the movie. It's called Handling the Undead. And if you've seen that movie, you know it's a very slow-paced, very methodical movie, and it's about mourning and loss and all that stuff. But it was really, to me, that movie was really missing something. I think he knew how to fill in the gaps here. He also just really knew how to use the environment to help tell the story, and this idea of humanity behind the eyes of these undead. I had never seen it portrayed so beautifully and so clearly. Like to me, it's the message was so clear without ever having to say anything, and I think that requires a lot of talent to really get it across. It's like, oh, this reanimated corpse that I should be terrified of is telling me something. That's skill, in my opinion.
I'm going to agree and give the same MVP to Zach Hilditch, but for a slightly different reason. Yes, he is the writer director, and the direction in this movie is perfectly fine. The cinematography is great. It's a very well shot movie. But and even though I have sat here and said like that, I have two major problems with the plot, which is the soldier scene and then the Cokie ending with the Hallmark ending. But outside of that, and I can look past those two flaws to say that I see the talent that Zach Hilditch brings to this movie as a writer. Because I think the way in is different with the military accident and these not just being, hard charging, brain eating zombies. Even though, like I said, it's not really a zombie movie. They're there, but they're not really the plot point that you're looking for in a zombie movie. Like if you're going in and thinking, oh my God, I'm going to see a crazy zombie movie, you're not going to get that. But two things in particular I did love about the writing. One was the creative way into the zombie, quote unquote, zombie apocalypse with like all these people dying on one island, and now we're just going in to clean up the mess. And two being the theme of guilt over grief. Yes, there's grief here, and there's absolutely torment, with Ava knowing her husband's dead, and that's real, and it does a really good job. But getting to the ending and getting the revelation that this is just as much about guilt as it is about grief, and it's about closure more than grief, even just really like saying goodbye and closing that chapter of her life. I really like that element of it when it all gets hashed out and revealed. I'm like, okay, well done. Like, what a really cool way in, and like we're not sitting here saying like the guy's just a dickhead asshole or the woman's just a dickhead asshole. Like they both made mistakes. They both realized probably too late they were not really meant to be together, but they never got that chance to have that final conversation. And so, Ava goes out of her way to have that conversation, even if it's a one-way conversation. She needs that moment to have that closure and that goodbye with her husband. So I really like that. So this is for Zach Hilditch writing, even though, like I said, there's a couple issues I have, but overall, it's a very strong performance in the writing aspect, and I do look forward to seeing what he does next.
I'm 100% in for what he does next. And with the regards to the theme of closure, every character is going through it. I mean, every character, characters in the background are going through it. He really understood how to drive his theme home, and it still didn't feel heavy-handed, but it was so clear. Nobody had a question. If you watch this movie, you're not like, I don't get it. What was it really about? Everybody gets it. It's because it's very skillfully placed, and it's not heavy-handed.
And by the way, and I think you'd agree with this, there's a difference between grief and closure. Like there's a
Big,
difference.
big difference. Big
Like
difference.
that's when I talk about trauma candy, it feels like that is just wrapped up in grief and trauma so much.
Yes.
This movie is more about closure than it is about grief. So I really appreciate that thematically in this movie. Patrick, next category, let's talk about the best zombie. There's only a few. We don't get to see a ton of zombies in this movie, but Patrick, what was your favorite zombie in We Bury the Dead?
I think I changed this at last minute, but I gave it to the pregnant zombie. Um, I really loved the choice they made in that moment to just have her look over and not do anything. She didn't raise her hand and point with like a wiry withered finger or anything. Like they really just they sold that. They sold her communicating to Ava so easily that ultimately took me over. I mean, I do think the RV scene is much better, but it was just something about the way the communication was happening between the two of them is why I ultimately ended up picking the pregnant zombie.
So my pick is the oil-covered zombie from the very like
It's a
basically
good
the
one.
first real the very basically the first really alive zombie we see with Ava and Clay going through a garage, and this zombie is like tucked away in a corner, covered in motor oil, and you just kind of see him like basically moving a little bit, like kind of like shuffling his feet back and forth, and you hear that like they do this weird like teeth cracking thing, which is really eerie and kind of like nails
Yeah.
on a chalkboard. and you just see his eyes. It's all dark and shadowy, but he's also covered in motor oil because they're in a garage. You just see his eyes move, and you're like, oh, fuck, there's something back there. Now, once again, setting the expectation, the zombie doesn't come charging at him, doesn't try to come in.
Yeah.
He's literally just standing there. And she's like, Clay. And he looks over and he's like, oh, fuck. And he raises up the garage and calls the soldiers over to kill the guy. But it's a really creepy scene because you just see the eyes move. And I just thought that was a really effective, like in the dark shadows and like not, like I said, I appreciate it, even though it does give you the wrong expectation for a zombie movie that it's not going to come charging at them trying to bite him. Just seeing him in the corner, you see the eyes move and nothing else. You're like, oh, fuck.
Yeah, and honestly, there's even a little bit, I think, in that moment. I bet if you get a hold of Zach, he'll admit it. There's a little nod to Tarman from Return of the Living Dead.
Yeah.
He's literally covered in motor oil. He doesn't even look human at that point. He literally looks like a melting ice cream. Like there's just something about the way they capture that zombie in that moment, and it is a great creepy moment in a movie that doesn't have a ton of like traditional horror scares in it. That was a really good one.
Yeah, I agree. Patrick, next category, remake, sequel, or leave it alone. This is pretty self-explanatory, but for anybody new here, this is the category where we take whatever movie we're reviewing and we say, should they remake it, should they sequelize it, or should they leave it alone? So when it comes to We Bury the Dead, where are you heading? Remake, sequel, or leave it alone?
I'm gonna say leave it alone. I like how it is, the way it is. Yeah, could I have handled a touch of a rewrite there with the whole baby thing? Yeah, probably. I probably could have, but I think this movie does the job. Like I could already hear someone saying American remake. And it's like, first of all, it's being released in American theaters with a completely English speaking cast. Like you don't need an American remake, but I can already hear it coming down the line. It's like we're gonna do an American
Cough, speak no evil, cough.
I mean, I can already hear it, and James McAvoy's already signed. But yeah, like to me, I think it did its job, and so I don't see a need for a remake of this, and I definitely don't need a sequel. There's no use for a sequel here.
The reality is, leave it alone is the right answer. If you're going to force my hand to say something else, I would say remake and just fix the couple of flaws because this movie is really, for me personally, it's really close to being a great movie. Just the soldier scene getting dragged out and the implications of that scene, and then the dumb Hallmark ending with the baby. If you change those two things, and like I said, I'm not saying I'm a better writer than Zach Hilditch. I'm certainly not. I'm just saying, like, make it the nurse thing where it's a little different way in. It's not the overlooming arc, the overlooming dread of she's going to be assaulted. And then the ending with, like, either just don't have that baby thing. Just don't have her trying to get pregnant as the theme and then she finds the baby, or just don't do the baby. If you tweak those two little things, I would have said this is probably going to be a movie that could potentially be like a top 10. That's how good it was. It was a top 10 level-ish movie. Now, it does drag a little bit. It's a little boring at parts, sure, but I don't mind a good slow burn. So I'm going to say leave it alone, but like I said, if you're going to force me to say something else, I would say if you could just make just a couple tweaks, this would have been a pretty, like, I wouldn't really have a lot of criticism for this movie.
I don't really have much to criticize from this movie currently. I mean, currently, I'm sure, Bone Temple's coming out any minute now. I'm sure that's going to overtake this movie rather easily. I don't want to get my expectations too high, but Nia DaCosta is a phenomenal director, Alex Garland writing, so I'm expecting some pretty interesting things out of that. But to me, this is like an early contender for top 10. I know it's literally the first movie of the year, and I'm like, strong showing, genuinely strong showing.
Yeah, I did. Like I said, overall I did like it. I have my issues, but overall I did like it. Patrick, next category: can we survive this horror film? Now I'm gonna ask this question, but I want to because I'm gonna show who we truly are in this moment. Natural disaster happens in Tasmania. They're looking for people to show up and volunteer to be body disposal people. Are you actually flying to Tasmania? Are you donating your? This reminded me so much of a line from Curb Your Enthusiasm where Larry and what I can't remember the manager, the guy who's like his manager in the
Steve Garland or whatever.
Yeah, and he's like they're talking about like a woman fell or something, and like they were talking about retrieving a hat, and his wife goes, "You two have no caring, no understanding, no empathy for another human being." And Larry goes, "There's some truth to that."
Yeah, Jeff Garland, by the way. Yes.
Jeff Garland, yeah.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
like, there's some truth to that. That kind of like, I'm not saying I wouldn't feel for the tragedy of this moment, but there's
Oh,
probably
sure.
there's a very unlikely chance I'm going to hop on a plane to Tasmania to do this job.
Very, very unlikely, Damon. Now I'll play devil's advocate and just say, okay, we go down anyway. You know, they're going to offer some $1 million to do it. Now I might actually have to go down there, but which totally defeats the point of like going down there. But I'll say this, based on the being put in that environment, survival is highly likely. Highly likely. I'm saying we're up in the 99% likely to survive this movie. I'm not gonna play the hero. I don't have somebody to break, the barriers and go down south to go find closure for. So yeah, the odds are good that if I'm fully in Ava's situation and my plan is to go down there, that likelihood goes down, but not by much. Now we're in the 75% range. Now it's like it might just be natural disasters or toxic fumes or stuff like that are going to kill me off. These zombies are not hard to beat.
And also, like, if you're going to force me to go there, I'm not trying to sound like an uncaring bastard, but like, if I've been told these people are dead, there's no coming back from it, I'm not going to feel guilty about putting an axe between one of their heads. Like, you can see there's like a little trace of guilt in Ava every time. And I understand it's because her husband, she's feeling a little guilty every time she runs into one of these like half dead, still kind of alive people. And you mentioned a very beautiful scene outside the RV when she helps the father bury his family, and then he puts him out of his misery. That is the moment where she realized like there is no coming back from this. There's not going to be some grand reunion with my husband. He's not going to pop out of the basement and be like, I'm alive. So that I appreciate it, but I'm just like, I understand death, and like if you're a zombie and you're gone, there's no coming back. I'm not gonna regret putting an axe between your head and putting you out of your misery. So I think I'd be fine because I'm not gonna be like, oh man, hold on now, she might be okay. No, as soon as I hear the teeth clacking into like, axe, you're dead. Like I'm not there's so I'd be fine. I fully admit I'd be fine with this one. So and also very capitalist. Pay me $1 million, I'll probably go down and clear out some zombies. So
Yeah, that's the easy answer right there.
Patrick, last category, not is it scary? Because I'll be honest, this is not really a scary movie. I would argue the scariest moment is actually a dream sequence when Ava feels like there's a zombie actually running at her and she wakes up and I'm like, oh
Yeah.
shit, and then it's not real. I'm like, oh okay.
Yeah.
But is it zombie? And Patrick, I'm here to tell you no. It's not really as I mean zombies are involved and there's a zombie element to it, but that's not this movie. Yeah, is it zombie? Yes, there are zombies there, but I'm telling you right now, if you're going into this movie thinking you're getting a zombie movie, zombies are like the fourth most important thing in this movie. Like they're not even like they're there and they do play a role, but it's not it's a drum zom. I don't know how you call it a zom drum. It's a drum zom. There's zombies there, but it's so third, fourth, like on the call sheet that like it just doesn't feel like a zombie film to me.
To me, Damon's 100% a zombie movie because ultimately you can make zombie movies look like anything. It could be an action movie, it could be a comedy, it could be a drama, it could be I don't know, pick your poison. You can really do anything with it. I mean, look at what 28 Days Later was. Like it's really hard to like pin that into a box. But what's most important is, did it have a strong theme? And we talked about it all night. The theme is closure, and it's right there, and it's baked into what's going on in this zombie apocalypse. It's not a zombie apocalypse, but it's baked into this zombie story. As the dead reanimate, we need closure. It's all over this movie. It's in the DNA of this movie. It's dyed in the wool. It's there. That to me makes it a zombie movie. I mean, look at Army of the Dead. Shit, there's another one where I was like, well, that's a heist movie. It just happens to have zombies in it. But yeah, no. Are you getting zombies attacking people a couple times? Like 2 or 3 times. It's not the focus of the movie. Is there dread in this movie? Yeah. Is there suspense in this movie? Yes. Are there thrills in this movie? Yes. I warmly welcome it into the horror community. Definitely. I just think it is very much like 87% drama, and I'm not going to be mad at it for that.
And yeah, when I say not zombie, I'm saying I'm setting expectations. And by this point, we're so deep into
Yeah.
spoilers. I hope you've seen it by the time we're getting to say this. But if
It's
not,
not Dawn of the Dead.
Yeah, I'm just telling you, like, don't go in thinking you're going to get harrowing zombie sequences. There's literally two, and they both last about a total of like a minute total.
Yeah.
Like,
Nobody's getting ripped
each.
apart. No brains are
Yeah.
getting eaten. You're not
There's
getting any of that.
There's no army general getting ripped apart and soldiers eating the zombie guts. None of that. Like, don't get that out of your head right now. None of that's going to happen. So that's when I say it's not a zombie. I just want to set expectations. Like, if you're like, ooh, zombie movie, calm down. Calm down. We Buried the Dead is in theaters right now. I know people get sick of me saying this, but it's more important now than ever. Go check this out in theaters if you can. People are literally trying to rob us of the theater experience. Don't let them take that away from us. Go to the theater. I just recently got my AMC A-list, whatever you call it. I don't know what they call it.
Yep.
I'm like, how did I not do this sooner? I have been going to the movies left and right. I'm like, how did I not do this sooner? This is such a great thing.
It's my favorite subscription, genuinely. The theater experience is unlike any other. You will like movies more. It'll make you enjoy a movie more if you get if you can afford an AMC subscription. If you got 30 streamers at home, you're paying way more for those. Like, get a theater subscription, go see a movie in a dark room where you have to focus, and it will change the experience, because all these filmmakers, Zach Hilditch and the like, they're making it to show it to you on a 100-foot screen, and it makes all the difference. It just does. It really does. I love the theater experience, and it's my favorite subscription by far.
The theater experience is so good that Patrick actually liked Stranger Things for a few hours and then came home, watched it again instead of hating it. So that should tell you how much the theater impacts you right there.
It really does. It really changes how you feel it, because I was like, damn, I like Stranger Things. And I came home and I was like, wait a minute.
Hold on now.
Hold on now.
Yeah, hold on now. So yeah, We Buried the Dead's in theaters. Go check it out. As always, want to say a big thank you to everyone that tunes in the show. Make sure you check us out on all your favorite podcast platforms, Apple Podcast, Spotify. Over on our YouTube channel, just search Rewind of the Living Dead, or find us on our website, rewindofthelivingdead.com. You can also find us on our Patreon, patreon.com/Rewind of the Living Dead. $5 a month. You're going to support your boys, but you're going to get early access. Like, this episode's going out way early. As you mentioned earlier, we did Alien Earth recaps. We did Welcome to Derry recaps. We do our Film Core podcast, which are non-horror films that you guys get to vote on. There's our patrons. So patreon.com/Rewind of the Living Dead. We always appreciate it. You got questions, comments, movies you'd like us to review, your thoughts on We Buried the Dead, hit us up anytime on email, rotlivingdead@gmail.com. That is rot. livingdead@gmail.com, or find us on social media. Just search Rewind of the Living Dead on Twitter/X, on Facebook and or Instagram, or you can also find us on our personal social media channels. I am at Damon Martin, and you are?
At Director Patrick.
And a big thank you, as always, for everyone that tunes in the show. We'll be back next week with another edition of Rewind of the Living Dead. Thanks for tuning in. We will see you then.
Peace.